This is a video lecture on acquisition and restructuring strategies. So strategies can be both vertical or horizontal. In vertical integration, you're moving backward if you're moving towards your suppliers and integrating those into the firm. You're moving forward if you're integrating your buyers into the firm. Horizontally, you have diversification, which was our previous lecture, and alliances, which is our next lecture. So in vertical integration, you have the value chain, which is a sequence of all activities performed by the firm, moving from the raw materials towards the finished product sold to the end customer. In vertical integration, also called insourcing, you're bringing additional business processes or activities that were previously outside the firm, such as suppliers or buyers, inside the firm. Outsourcing is the opposite, where a firm contracts with an outside business to take over some piece of the value chain for them. So an example of this in the oil industry, you have the exploration of crude oil, locating it, drilling for it, shipping it somewhere else, refining the crude oil, shipping the refined products, and selling those refined products. So in some instances, those are all done by individual companies in a vertically integrated firm that could all be done by the same firm. So an acquisition example, eBay in 2003, after unsuccessfully convincing their customers to use their own payment system that they created after the success of PayPal, decided to buy PayPal. So the partnership made sense. They both relied on transaction-based revenue. They didn't have any type of inventory or warehousing of their products. Were all digital, no sales force or significant labor to speak of. So there was a lot of potential overlap in their strategies and sort of how they did those with their core competencies. So, but the question is, would it work? Would it be worth the $250 million that they paid sort of over the current stock price, the premium, would that be outweighed with savings and revenue growth? Savings through additional efficiencies on the administrative side or otherwise, and just additional money that they could potentially grow through synergies. So in 2014, they decided to spin off PayPal to better compete with Square, Apple Pay, and others, though their contract remains in effect till 2020, at which point they'll no longer have sort of premium payment status on the eBay platform. So likely they did recoup this money in the 10 years. PayPal maintained its dominant position on eBay and was not displaced by anything else. So they likely made their money back. So acquisition is increasingly popular due to globalization, the deregulation of many industries in different economies and countries, favorable legislation. There's a lot less stopping of acquisitions and mergers due to antitrust concerns. Occasionally there sort of forces certain spin-offs to occur, but primarily legislation has been very pro-acquisition. So this has increased both the number and the size of domestic and cross-border acquisition, especially in emerging economies where that deregulation has been occurring, or there's been a lot of growth in purchasing power of customers, so firms want to get into that area and make money. So a success story is Cooper Industries. Founded way back in 1833, Cooper's initial product offerings included everything from plows, kettles, and stoves that later shifted to steam engines. They played a large role in World War II, supplying engine components that powered many of the U.S. naval vessels. After the war, however, Cooper realized that that business was going to go away, so they wanted to diversify towards long-term stability. So they expanded its offerings into electrical products and away from more cyclical industries such as automotive and petroleum. So they have been very successful with their acquisition strategy, and so their published guidelines for diversification are often used by other firms to guide them in acquiring. So they seek acquisitions that exhibit stable earnings or earning patterns that are counter-cyclical to the ones they already have. So whether it's seasonal or economic cycles, by balancing those out, it helps smooth out their earnings. They acquire products that serve basic and essential needs that are derived from proven technology, thereby contributing to an objective of operating in stable markets with predictable growth. So they're not taking huge risks. They're looking for proven winners. And they acquire manufacturing companies with products that are of high quality and that are leaders in their markets. So what is the difference between a merger and an acquisition? So a merger is the consolidation or combination of one firm with another. Essentially similar size, similar power firms joining forces into one larger firm. An acquisition is the outright purchase of one firm by another, so that ownership transfers. Now, in truth, much like the merger of Daimler Chrysler in 1997, which was considered to be an acquisition in disguise, but that was called a merger because there were fears that domestic customers would not like Chrysler being purchased by a foreign firm, but merging seemed much more palatable. But the truth is most mergers are acquisitions. Mergers are fairly rare because generally it's very unlikely to have two very similar sized firms where they decide to join forces. Often it is a larger firm buying a smaller firm. Daimler Chrysler timeline, a less successful story. In 1998, Daimler Chrysler was formed after German group Daimler-Benz and Chrysler Group, the third largest U.S. car maker, joined forces in a $37 billion deal described as a merger of equals. The merged company has a joint revenue of $130 billion and sales of 4.4 million cars. In 2000, the CEO of Daimler Chrysler says that the company is aiming to become the world's leading car maker within 3 years and buys a third of Mitsubishi for $2 billion to boost its presence in Asia. In 2001, struggling with high costs and lackluster sales, the U.S. chief launches a restructuring of Daimler Chrysler to cut $2 billion in costs by laying off about 20% of the workforce. In 2003, the joint market cap slides to $38 billion, down from $92 billion. Before the merger, Daimler-Benz alone had a market cap of $47 billion, so a lot of the market value has been eroded. In 2004, the board of directors refuses to back a call from the CEO for the company to contribute another $7 billion to help bail out Mitsubishi and keep that investment from being a loss. In 2005, the CEO steps down. After 10 years at the helm, he's replaced by the U.S. chief on January 1st of 2006. February 2007, the Chrysler Group reports an operating loss of $1.5 billion, says it's going to cut another 13,000 jobs or 16% of its workforce in a restructuring, and basically acknowledges restructuring charges of up to $1.3 billion on its books. Later, 2007 in April, U.S. sales fell another 4%. In May, They basically got bought out by Cerberus Capital Management, who got a 81% stake in Chrysler and retained its financial services business group for $4.7 billion, which is an estimated $9.25 billion market cap, down from pre-merger of $45 billion. So the CEO of Daimler Chrysler said that we obviously overestimated the potential of synergies in 2007 as they were selling off half the company for a fraction of its original value. It was a huge understatement. So, the acquisition process. So first you have the brilliant idea to acquire another firm, and you move into justification, due diligence, and negotiation. So you can run into decision-making process problems. Later, after the acquisition, you have the acquisition integration, and then that finally leads to your ultimate financial performance results. So in that integration stage, you can have integration process problems. So, as Warren Buffett said, the market, like the Lord, helps those who help themselves, but unlike the Lord, the market does not forgive those who do not know what they do. A too high purchase price for the stock of an excellent company can undo the effects of a subsequent decade of favorable business development. So regardless of how amazing the firm is that you're acquiring, if you overpay for that, you can essentially undo all of the money that you would have made in a well-negotiated acquisition. So reasons for acquisitions. Firms can use acquisitions to increase their market power, to overcome entry barriers into a new market or region. This is often the case in industries that have high regulation or some other significant barrier to entry, or international entry to gain a lot of knowledge of the local culture and customers, etc. You can use it to avoid product development costs and increase your speed to the market of a new product. You reduce the risk of entering a new business because you're acquiring someone who is already profitable in that industry. You can use it to become more diversified in all the things we talked about in the previous lecture. You can use it to avoid excessive competition, as we've seen with Facebook, who keeps buying up anyone who challenges it, leading to continued market dominance. And you can use it to learn and develop new capabilities, basically get R&D or other type capabilities from a firm that is doing well in an area that you want to get into. And finally, to increase CEO pay. More of this in another lecture, but the simplest thing is that your CEO pay is largely based on the size of the firm. So the bigger the firm that you command, the bigger your paycheck. So acquisitions help grow the firm and therefore help grow your paycheck. So problems with acquisitions. Integration difficulties. It can be very difficult to integrate firms in general, especially if there are large cultural differences within the two firms. You can have an inadequate evaluation of the target, i.e., in your due diligence, you did not do a great job of valuing the target or its capabilities and either overpay due to excessive hype or sort of overestimating how valuable their capabilities would be for you. It can lead to large amounts of debt for your firm if you're buying other firms with debt. You can fail to achieve the wonderful synergies that sound great in press releases, but are difficult to pull off sometimes. You can become too diversified, as we talked about that curvilinear effect where some diversification is good, but too much diversification often leads to lower performance. So if you acquire too many firms, you can run into that problem too. You can distract your managers from the operations of the firm because they're overly focused on this, big, well-publicized win of buying a firm. Gets a lot of press and can be seen as a bold strategic move, and therefore can be very distracting for managers who are putting all of their time and focus into this acquisition instead of continuing to run their business well. And then finally, it can result in you just becoming too large, which can run into bureaucracy issues. So the growth share matrix. So this is a way to look at your various business units and see where we should invest, what are new areas we should try to get into. If we are wanting to vertically integrate, it may make sense to invest in our stars instead of our dogs, for instance. So stars combine high share with high growth, and smart managers invest in these to maintain and improve their positions over time. This is basically your best case scenario. Cash cows are industries that you have a high market share, but there's a low growth. So they can generate a lot of cash for you to invest in other areas, but generally it's not worth putting money back into that business unit because the growth is slowed and the positions in the market are a lot slower moving. Dogs are sort of your worst case scenario. You have a low market share and there's low growth. They don't add a lot of profitability to your overall corporate portfolio. Sometimes they can have a strategic value because of some type of complementarity with one of your other business units, but this may be an area that you want to get out of. And then question marks are interesting problem for management because they are high growth rates, so there's high potential for profits there, but as a low relative market share, you have to invest a lot of time and resources and managerial know-how into growing that into a star. So characteristics of effective acquisitions. The acquiring and target firms have complementary resources, RBV in there, that can be the basis for additional core competencies in the newly created firm. The acquisition is friendly, facilitating the integration of those two firms, and making it easier for employees to merge the cultures, and you're less likely to lose all of the employees of the acquisition firm. If there's a hostile takeover and you lose a lot of your labor, then you could be losing a lot of your value that you assessed in this firm you're acquiring. And then finally, if the merged firm maintains a low or moderate level of debt by either selling off parts of the acquired firm or some of the poorly performing units, this can be a way to sort of maximize your value that you're getting out of the acquisition. The target firm being selected and purchased based on thorough and effective and accurate due diligence, so that you don't overpay. If the acquiring and target firms both have considerable slack, either in cash or debt capacity, can give the newly enlarged firm additional time to integrate and find synergies and success before they run out of money or debt and are on the cliff for bankruptcy. If acquiring and acquired firms have experience in terms of adapting to change, or the acquiring firm has acquisition experience, that can also help as well. And then finally, if R&D and innovation are emphasized in the new firm, that is a way to tend to have a better acquisition because it's easier to know what you're getting. You're getting that innovation and research and development team as opposed to other more difficult things to capture. So restructuring, there are three types of restructuring. You have downsizing, downscoping, and leverage buyouts. Uh, Downsizing tends to focus on reducing your labor costs, has the downside of losing your human capital, and tends toward lower performance. Downscoping, you're getting rid of pieces of the company that you are not doing well in, which can improve your focus, and selling those off can help reduce your debt. And so that can lead towards higher performance. Leveraged buyout can help you have additional focus, additional control, but it also tends to be done with debt, and that causes higher risk, but can lead to higher performance. So downsizing, it's often stated intent of reducing administrative duplications or bureaucratic inefficiencies. In addition to reacting to poor firm performance, this is commonly a source of the planned savings and or efficiency that are touted in acquisition evaluations of how once we buy this firm, we're going to have these millions of dollars of savings. That's what they're talking about. It also can be used to reduce or eliminate underproducing business units that are dragging the corporation down. Your business unit failed, you lay off all the people, and now your future prospects are better because you've essentially got rid of some of the dead wood of the corporation. So restructuring through downscoping just tends to reduce the level of diversification and allows you to refocus on your core businesses. So leverage buyouts. LBO definition, basically a large public firm is purchased largely through debt, and so that can become a private entity. The goal is to improve efficiency and performance so that the firm could be successfully sold in 5 to 8 years. The three types are management buyouts, employee buyouts, and whole firm buyouts. It's basically just who is sort of organizing the buyout, primarily through debt or loans from private investors. So an example of this is the $25 billion leverage buyout of Dell in 2013, which allowed the firm to take larger risks and transition to a more enterprise focus. 5 years later, after successfully doing those things, growing their enterprise business and sort of re-energizing their consumer products, the company returned to public trading with the $22 billion buyout of about a third of the ownership of private investors, allowing the firm to reduce their debt and have more money for future growth. So restructuring, the goal is to gain or reestablish effective strategic control of the firm, give you better chance in the future. Of the three restructuring strategies, downscoping is aligned most closely with establishing and using strategic controls. It usually improves performance the most on a comparative basis to the other two strategies.